One time, I actually got a note from a parent that said the dog ate their child's homework. And so the bottom was all ripped and crumpled, and at the top she wrote, "Sorry, our dog got a hold of it." And I said, "Well, the day has finally come. I got a dog ate my homework note." My name is Emma, and along with the 240 team, I've helped thousands of teachers pass their Praxis exams. Are you a teacher or soon-to-be teacher who needs to pass your Praxis? If so, you're in the right place. This video is going to prepare you for the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching Pre-K through 12 test. That's number 5625. And this video is going to cover 3 things: what's on the test and how to study for it, the biggest concepts that you need to master, and after that, we're going to look at a few practice questions. Who's ready to write their success story? Let's get going and write chapter 1 together. Now, this Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching exam consists of 4 content categories: students as learners, instructional process, assessment, and professional development, leadership, and community. There are 100 selected response questions on this test, and you will have 120 minutes to complete those questions. Because this test has 100 questions, you can think about each question as worth 1% of the overall exam grade. Roughly 31 questions on the test will fall under Category 1, about 30 questions will fall under Category 2, about 20 questions will be about Category 3, and about 19 questions will be under Category 4. Let's walk through what topics you can expect to see in each category, starting at the very beginning, a very good place to start. For Category 1, you'll see questions about student development and the learning process, students as diverse learners, and student motivation and the learning environment. So basically, it includes everything you need to know about your students. And you also need to know how to reach all of those young people as an educator. This might seem daunting, but don't worry, we'll go through it piece by piece. And don't forget to stick around, because later we'll tackle a few practice questions together. But first, let's break down some of those topics that you're most likely to see in Category 1, starting with student development and the learning process. In this section, you're going to focus on anything that will help students learn better. An important part of teaching goes beyond the teacher sharing specific content knowledge and focuses on teaching students how to learn. Teachers should help students develop metacognition, which is the process of thinking about one's own thinking. Now I'm thinking about my own thinking. I wonder if I could pull the old dog ate my homework trick. Maybe I could say my cat deleted my spreadsheet. Oh yeah, about metacognition. There are several different strategies teachers can use to facilitate metacognition, such as activating prior knowledge, using graphic organizers, questioning, and annotating, but the most important thing to know about metacognition is that it helps students recognize how they learn best. While using the strategies, teachers should guide students through thinking about their thinking. Feeling warmed up? Let's keep going through Category 1. Next up is working with diverse learners. Students in your classroom will have a variety of diverse needs, and same goes for the types of questions you'll see in this category. Expect questions about English language learners, gifted students, and students receiving 504 or special education services. Want to hear the absolute need-to-knows for your exam about students receiving special ed services? I have an idea for what to talk to you about, and that's IDEA, which stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. IDEA has 6 main elements, and you can find them all in our study guide, but the most essential one for you to know on the PLT is the IEP. I like that little acrostic we just saw. Let's do it again. IEP stands for Individualized Education Program. This is a plan created by a committee of general and special education teachers, parents, specialists, and administrators to provide a free and appropriate public education that is tailored to a student's needs and goals. IDEA mandates that all students receiving special education services should have an IEP, and that all teachers are required to follow them. Did you know interior design would be part of your job as an educator? Really, there are important considerations to make when designing the layout of your classroom. And don't worry, your girl is an expert interior designer. Let's take a peek inside our study guide to see some common arrangements and the instructional formats they best support.
Teachers should be mindful that the student seating arrangement works in conjunction with the instructional activity. In other words, different setups lend themselves best to different tasks. When listening to any type of presentation, whether it be from the teacher, a guest speaker, or fellow classmates, students should all be able to see. Facing front typically works best. When the whole class is having a discussion, it's helpful for everyone to be seen. When collaborating on a group assignment, it's beneficial for students to sit together. The walkways should be open so the teacher can easily move to check on each group. And when the teacher is working with a small group of students, the rest of the class should still be in view.
That was some great information. And if you'd like to see more videos like that as you prepare for your exam, subscribe to a 240 study guide. Before we move on to Category 2, do you want to hear one more tip about creating an effective learning environment? Yeah, I thought you would. While there's a lot to consider when it comes to the physical space of a classroom, safety always comes first. Students should be able to move around the room and access needed materials safely and efficiently. So if you see an answer choice that references making the room a safe space for students, that's usually the right one. Okay, we made it through our first category, but we're just getting warmed up. Let's move on to the next biggest portion, Category 2. About equal to Category 1, this category is worth about 30% of your overall score. Category 2 is all about instruction, as in the actual teaching you'll be doing in the classroom. In this category, you'll need to know about planning instruction, instructional strategies, and both questioning and communication techniques. Let's kick off this category by hearing a key concept on planning. Just like most parts of being a teacher, there are many factors to consider when planning instruction. And sometimes, even the best plans don't go, well, according to plan. But hey, it happens, and you are a superstar teacher, so you can handle it, both in the classroom and when it comes up on your exam. Here are some ways to reflect on how your lesson went. Did most of the class greatly struggle? Teach it again using a different approach. You may also ask yourself whether or not the expectations were clear. Did the students master everything except this one little part? Target it. Again, it's probably a good idea to rethink the approach you took the first go-round. Did most of the class demonstrate mastery? Time to move on or bump up the challenge. The most important takeaway here, reteach in a different way when students don't understand something the first go-round. Okay, you've planned and adjusted your instruction. Now, how are you going to deliver it? There are many strategies you can use to deliver quality instruction. Let's discuss one that's bound to come up on your exams. We've established that planning is important, and it definitely is. But some of the most authentic teaching happens when the lesson gets a little off track. A teachable moment is an unexpected opportunity to teach something new. Teachers should capitalize on these. A teachable moment may come in the form of a student question, like a student who comes into science class after getting a flu shot and asks how vaccines work. It could also be in response to something else unexpected, like a typo in the heading of a news article that prompts a mini lesson on apostrophes. Teachable moments are powerful because they present authentic learning opportunities that are immediately meaningful and relevant to students. Questioning and communicating with students are so important to include in instruction that they get their own part of the category. We'll go through these two areas one at a time to make sure we're giving them the airtime they deserve, starting with questioning. Do you want to know a great framework to use throughout the instructional process, including questioning? Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is used to classify educational learning objectives into levels of complexity and specificity. The levels are modeled as a pyramid, starting with foundational skills at the base and increasing in rigor as they work their way up that particular skill or concept. When thinking about questioning, answering a question toward the bottom of the pyramid would require basic fact recall, such as, what are some resources provided in your community? Whereas higher level thinking is required as you move up the pyramid, with a question like, how would you improve your community? Want more practice identifying levels of Bloom's? We have it covered for you in our study guide. Do you want to hear some more good news? We've almost made it through Category 2. Let's talk a bit about communication techniques. Communication with students is a key factor in effective teaching. And I have the perfect video for highlighting some of the most important things to know about communication for your exam.
In the classroom, communication is key. Communication with students must be clear and specific. Remember, students don't know what they don't know. For the classroom to run smoothly, students must clearly understand expectations and directions. Teachers need to clearly communicate what they want students to do and how the students are supposed to make it happen.
Couldn't have said it better myself. How are we feeling? A little overwhelmed? Well, I have a couple pieces of good news for you. First, we've got our biggest categories out of the way. The other two won't be so bad. And second, you can find everything you need to gain the confidence you deserve to pass your exam in our study guides. All right, next category, here we come. Category 3 is all about assessment. It's worth 20% of your overall score with about 20 selected response questions. So yeah, part of your assessment is about assessment. So you're taking an assessment about assessment, and when you pass the assessment, you're going to give your students an assessment and teach them how to assess their own assessments, and it's just so much assessing. Oh, where were we? Category 3, yes. This category is broken up into assessment and evaluation strategies and assessment tools. Let's talk about assessment and evaluation strategies first. A big part of this portion is being able to match an objective to an assessment. I'll give you an example. Let's say you need to collect assessment data on your students' reading fluency. A running record is the way to go. This assessment aligns best with the objective because notes can be made as the student reads aloud to collect data on their fluency. Let's stay on this assessment train and ride on home. In the assessment tools portion, you'll need to know more about assessment terminology. Expect to see vocabulary like percentile rank, stay 9, formative, summative, norm referenced, and criterion referenced on your exam. Let's dig into these two. Criterion referenced assessments compare student performance to a predetermined standard, which is a criteria. Scores on these types of tests come in the form of a percentage. Tests administered at the end of an instructional unit and state achievement tests are common examples. Norm referenced assessments compare students to each other and rank them according to their performance. Scores on these types of tests come in the form of a percentile, grade level equivalency, or stay 9 using a normal bell-shaped curve. Common examples include the SAT and IQ tests. To sum this all up, criterion referenced assessment looks at how students perform against a set criteria. Norm referenced assessment looks at how students perform against the normal curve. And those are some of your need-to-knows for Category 3. Want to see more? You know where to find it. One more time for the people in the back. It's in the study guide. We made it to the last category. Category 4 covers professional development, leadership, and community, and it's worth about the same amount of your overall score as Category 3, with about 19 questions. Here, you'll need to know about collaboration, both with other professionals and with students' families. You'll also see questions about improving your practice as a teacher, including specific vocabulary related to professional development. One of the terms to watch for is academic journal. You may love to peruse teaching blogs or chat with fellow educators in an online community, and that's great. But on this exam, resources for professional development should be backed by research. That's why we like academic journals. That's it! You made it through all the categories. You know what? You deserve some confetti. Now, let's do some practice questions. Oh, come on, it'll be fun. These practice questions will show you how these concepts can appear on the test. If you want a lot of practice questions, you can click the free practice test in the description. And after you see how you did on that test, you'll know exactly what you need to study in the guide. Now for questions. Let's start back at the beginning with students as learners. Here's an example from the Development and Learning section. Remember metacognition? Which of the following examples would best help students to improve their skills of metacognition? A and B allow students to be creative and have ownership over their learning experience, which are both great ideas, but neither helps with metacognition, so they're out. Creating lessons that relate to different learning styles is also great practice in the classroom, but doesn't require students to think about their own learning, so we can get rid of that one too. Choice D is best. By asking students to think about which strategies would work best with a new assignment, you're asking them to understand how to organize material for their own consumption. While metacognition is important, there's so much more to this section. Luckily, our study guide has it all for you. Next up, diverse learners. Ooh, here's a great example focusing on creating an IEP. Remember, even if you're not a special education teacher, you may spend time on an IEP team for your students. When deciding the least restrictive environment, LRE, for a student with disabilities, what should the IEP team consider? The best answer is this one. In order to create the least restrictive environment for a student, the frequency, location, duration, and intensity of the identified services the student requires need to be considered. Let's move on to Category 2, the instructional process. How about a question on strategies? As Ms. Harrigan is teaching about alternatives to fossil fuels, a student speaks up, complaining that alternative sources are not a good idea because they cost more. Which response would best lead the class through a learning experience related to this objection? This is a tough one. I can see most of these being used in a classroom, but one answer is definitely best here. By choosing choice A, incorporating the question into a future lesson, Ms. Harrigan not only shows respect for the student who asked the question, but gives herself time to investigate the question and gives the class an opportunity to make a cost-benefit comparison of alternative fuels. She also takes advantage of a teachable moment. So A is best. Nice! Let's tackle one more from this category. Ooh, remember Bloom's taxonomy? The 9th grade teachers at Mountain Brook High School are planning a unit on the Cold War. They want to challenge their students using higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, so they are brainstorming ideas to replace their current activities. Which of these requires the highest level of thinking? You know what? Let's just order all of these choices from lowest to highest according to Bloom's. Choice A is going to land in either the remember or understand level of Bloom's, depending on the type of question asked, so it's at the bottom. Choice B will come next because it requires students to apply their knowledge. Next, choice D is asking students to analyze the policies of the two powers, so we're getting closer to the top. Choice C is best. This requires students to evaluate the effectiveness of a key policy and to create an original essay. Evaluating and creating are the two highest levels in Bloom's taxonomy. 2 categories down, 2 to go. Now we're moving on to assessment. Remember when I listed off all those assessment types you'd need to know? Let's see what you've got. Which of the following is an example of a formative assessment? Formative assessments measure learning as it is formed and can help you adjust your lessons to meet your students where they're at. So A is the best choice. Using an exit ticket will give a teacher a quick look into how their students are progressing. Like I mentioned before, there are a ton of assessment types. In order to learn all the types you could see on your test, make sure you subscribe to our study guide. Last category, PD, leadership, and community. Let's see a question on collaborating with your teacher peers. Which of the following best promotes professional collaboration and mutual support? A lot of these look good, but we can knock out A right away. We love to see some peer tutoring, but that's kiddo collaboration. We need a choice about adults. Now, the 3 remaining choices could all be considered collaboration, but the key here is mutual support. So while C and D are both great practices, they're probably required by the district. Choice B here is best. Examples like the art teacher leading a unit that focuses on the same time period as the students are currently learning about in history shows professional collaboration and mutual support. And that's it. You made it! Congratulations on finishing the video. If you found it helpful, throw us a like. But there's still plenty more to learn. Did you know that thousands of teachers have used 240 to help them pass this exam? If you really want to make sure you're prepared for the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching grades pre-K through 12 exam, take the next step and subscribe to the 240 study guide. It has hours of videos so you can watch and or listen as you please. And it's test aligned so you know precisely what you need to study. And it has hundreds of practice questions so you can be sure you're ready. So click the link below right now to get started. Okay, that was great. Oh no, get the dog away from the camera!